Confused about which bird feeder is right for you? Join me today and we're going to discuss and rate 3 types of bird feeders. Dan from Avian Avarice here. It's a beautiful winter day in New Jersey. Birds are flocking to my feeders, and maybe you're curious what you need to do to get some birds coming to your feeders as well. There's many different styles of bird feeders. We can't cover them all in this introductory video, and it can be really confusing if you've never bought any before to know which one is right, what do they all do, what are their strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to break down seed feeders into 3 basic categories: vertical feeders, platform feeders, and clinging feeders. We're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each one. We're going to rate them on 3 basic categories. Now, we're not going to cover how each of these feeders is deployed in the yard. We're not going to cover all the accessories that could go with them, but we're going to talk about the feeders themselves and what their strengths and weaknesses are. In the future, we plan to return to this subject and have a much deeper discussion about bird feeders in our expert level video. We're going to evaluate each of these feeders on 3 criteria: utility, pest resistance, and bird diversity. For utility, we're talking about how easy is this feeder to use in your yard, and that includes things like seed capacity, ease of bird observation, and also setup or cleanup. For pest resistance, we're talking mostly about mammal resistance. How easy is it to keep squirrels, chipmunks, or even bears off of your bird feeder? In addition to that, we sometimes deal with less desirable birds, starlings, pigeons, and other things. And the reason for that is maybe they just cause a nuisance, or maybe they eat all the seed. And also the issue of weather resistance, because weather could lead to things like mold or fungus building up. Finally, there's the issue of bird diversity. Many feeders that are very good at attracting a wide variety of birds won't be as good at attracting some specific type that you might be interested in getting. By contrast, a feeder that's specifically designed for a particular type of bird, like a woodpecker, might not attract the wide variety of birds. So this one doesn't really have a good or a bad, but we'll talk about it in terms of which feeder attracts the widest variety of birds. So the first category is vertical feeders. These are feeders that are essentially up and down, and they usually require birds to perch on them, usually on some small perch. And that makes them best suited for perching birds. The traditional vertical feeder is something like this, a tube feeder. And you can see here there's ports where seed is dispensed and birds land on the perches. One advantage of a feeder like this is that it has very large seed capacity. You could store several pounds of seed in a feeder like this. They also, of course, come in smaller sizes, so this is maybe the smallest size seed feeder you might find, tube feeder you might find. And this just has 2 ports, but these are great because you don't have to refill them very often. So once you hang them out there, you might be able to leave them for several days or even a week, maybe longer, without having to go out and refill the feeder. It's a big plus, especially in cold weather like this. Some vertical feeders also have specialized ports for distributing different types of seed. This one, for example, is designed for distributing Niger, which is a seed that a lot of small finches like to eat. And you can see that while we're not really going to go into a lot of the accessories, this one's got a tray, and many of these feeders can be equipped with cages or trays or other types of accessories to make them more useful in your particular yard. One of the downsides of a feeder like this, of course, is that the bird that's using it needs to be able to land on this perch. So larger birds like cardinals or grosbeaks might have a difficult time landing on here. Some of the more acrobatic larger birds like blue jays or maybe red-bellied woodpeckers might find a way to get on here anyway, but it'll be harder for them to do so. One other consideration is how easy it is for you to observe the birds. It's probably one of the main reasons why you're interested in bird feeding. You can imagine that if the feeder is hanging perpendicular to your view, you can get a good view of the birds that are there. But if the position is wrong, or if the birds cause the feeder to rotate while it's hanging, you do have the problem of maybe some birds will be out of view if they're in the back. For pest resistance, these feeders generally have a certain amount of pest resistance because they have very small perches, and that keeps certain types of larger things off of them, certain mammals off of them. However, squirrels can climb down these, chipmunks can climb down them. Basically, if you put them in a place where a chipmunk or a squirrel or another mammal can get to, they'll get into the feeder. And bears, if they can reach them, just any feeder a bear is just going to rip down. So there's really no protection from those in the feeder itself. Overall, vertical feeders attract good bird diversity. but they may exclude certain types of species that need an easier place to land. Because of all these factors, overall, I give vertical feeders a utility rating of an A. For pest resistance, a B, and with accessories, that can be improved. Bird diversity, also a B, because they exclude some of the larger species, but attract a wide variety of the smaller ones. So overall, I give vertical feeders an A-. Our next category is horizontal or platform feeders. This group of feeders includes the simplest open tray where you might put seed, and it includes the sort of traditional barn feeder like this one. The main feature of these is that they have a wide landing space, and birds usually land directly on the feeding area. This makes it easy for larger birds to land right in the open space and eat whatever you put in there. The trade-off, of course, is that it's easy for squirrels to jump on them, and it's easy for large birds like grackles or pigeons to land directly on there. And if you're unconcerned about attracting those types of species, then that's not a drawback. But if you live in a place where you do not want to attract those larger, heavier species that sometimes can bully the feeder, then this might not be a good choice for you. One upside is if you're interested in attracting certain types of more reluctant species, like rose-breasted grosbeak, this is the type of feeder they might land on. In some cases, these feeders can be hung, like this bird buddy. In some cases, they can be window mounted. This actually is meant to be bracketed with suction cups and attached to a window. And in other cases, they will be post mounted. So there's a clamp on the bottom of this that allows this to be attached to a post. In general, these types of platform feeders are a little bit more challenging to mount because they have to be horizontal. The hanging feeders may be a little bit more forgiving in terms of where you can place them. Materials are also an important consideration. You see, two of these feeders are made of wood. Wood, of course, is a little bit more prone to rot or degradation than some of the plastic feeders would be. And that's a consideration when it comes to cleaning and when it comes to maintenance. One advantage of a feeder like this is that almost anything can be placed in it as long as it fits. That could be suet, it could be fruit, it could be mealworms, it could be seed, it could be just about anything that will fit into the space. That means that I could potentially attract a wide variety of birds as long as larger species don't scare them off. Sometimes big tray feeders can be placed directly on the ground, which might attract larger ground-dwelling species like towhee that would otherwise be reluctant to go to a feeder if it was positioned in a tree or above the ground. The trade-off there is, again, makes it easier for mammals to reach, and in some cases, bears, deer, or other large mammals may come and really wreak havoc on that feeder. One advantage of a feeder like this is that from all angles you can see whatever bird is landed on it very easily. By contrast, a feeder like this may have some blocking points where you will not be able to see the bird as well. It still offers pretty good overall visibility, but depending on how it's deployed, you may have some shadows covering some of the birds, or you may have some of these vertical supports covering it. And this is something that's important to consider when you're choosing a place to mount or position the feeder. One disadvantage of a feeder like this, or any of these platform feeders, is capacity. There's not much seed that can fit in here. And unfortunately, in my yard, birds would clean this out in a day or maybe 2 days at most, which would mean I'd have to refill it almost daily. Because of the flexibility of the different types of foods that can be put in these feeders, and because they're fairly simple to deal with, I give them an overall utility rating of a B. They lose some points because they could be difficult to clean. If they're wooden, they might be a little bit less resistant to the weather, and they also have the problem of sometimes being hard to position in the yard. For pest resistance platform feeders, I give a D. And that's because they're wide open space, which is an advantage for attracting larger birds, also means that they're very easy for mammals to get on, and also troublesome bird species like pigeons. For bird diversity, I give platform feeders as a group an A or an A-, but the trouble there is that it depends on which feeder you're talking about. Some of them are better for certain species, some for others, but they do have the advantage of allowing just about any bird to land on them if they're positioned in the right place and if they have the right bird seed available inside of them. Overall, I give platform feeders a composite score of a B-. The last category of bird feeders that I'm going to review today is clinging feeders, and this includes things like traditional suet cages, and it can also include more complicated clinging wire feeders. And there's so many other types of feeders out there that could qualify as clinging feeders, but we're going to stick to these for today. A traditional suet cage is a very simple design. It's meant to put a block of suet in, and it hangs from a tree or somewhere else. This is kind of a similar idea, except inside of here you could put peanuts, you could put suet pellets, large pieces of seed, not sunflower, which would fall through the holes, but larger objects that will stay inside the cage. This is designed for birds that are going to cling, birds that naturally are going to be found hanging or clinging, even upside down when they're feeding. So this appeals to birds like woodpeckers, nuthatches, chickadees, titmice, things like that. One advantage of feeders like this is that they're self-limiting in the types of birds that will land on them. So you know it's not really going to attract house sparrows. It's certainly going to be hard for a pigeon to land on this. But you will get birds like woodpeckers and nuthatches. It has small capacity. Usually most clinging feeders do. There are some exceptions, but they're usually smaller feeders. And they also have the disadvantage of being kind of hard to protect from mammals, but the small size may make them a little bit easier to position so that mammals can't get to them. If a squirrel can get to this feeder, you better believe it's going to eat everything inside. Maintenance is a mixed bag for these types of feeders because something like a suet feeder may require really no maintenance. The mess just falls out of it. But something like this will require some maintenance as old seed or food gets stuck in places and needs to be cleaned. Clinging feeders also have the distinct advantage that if you put the right food in them, you might be able to attract birds that are not typically going to come to other types of feeders. So if you're looking to attract a Carolina wren or a pine warbler to your feeder, some sort of clinging feeder with suet or fruit in it might be the way to go. Because they're relatively easy to hang in position, I give clinging feeders a B for utility. Because they don't really have any inherent way to keep mammals off, but they are pretty good at repelling larger birds, I give them also a B for pest resistance. And finally, for bird diversity, I'm going to give them a C, but we have to understand that they're really good at attracting certain types of birds and just not great at attracting every type of bird. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you have to know what you want. Overall, I give clinging feeders a B. There are many other types of specialized feeders out there. Feeders for fruit, for mealworms, for sugar water, for hummingbirds, and so many other things. And we'll cover those in a separate video at another time. But I hope this gives you a good introduction to some of the most basic types of feeders out there. And if you've never owned a bird feeder before and you're trying to decide how to start, this is a good starting point for you. Just say like and subscribe.
Is it even on me right now?
Yeah, just say like and subscribe.